Hey, what's up guys? This is Zach from Monolithic PC again. Today I'm going to be showing you how to do a 5-minute mod. Now, let me be clear before we get started, the mod doesn't take 5 minutes. I'm going to show you how to do it in 5 minutes. What we're going to be doing is taking an old GPU I had laying around and we're going to paint it. So, first thing I want to cover is I'm not responsible for any damage that may occur to your component throughout this. Anytime you take a component apart, there is a risk that you could damage it. You have to be very careful when handling these, as circuit boards are sensitive equipment. So, without further ado, let's see what we need and get started. Okay guys, the first thing we're going to need is a component. Without a piece of hardware, we would just be standing around spraying paint into thin air, and you're not going to get much done. You could enjoy the fumes though. Maybe you'll enjoy the fumes. Next up, we have a scuff pad. Scuff pad is just to rough up the surface a little bit because paint needs a rough surface to adhere to. It won't adhere well to a smooth surface. You are also going to need some painter's tape. We will use painter's tape to paint up anything on the hardware that we do not want to get painted and we do not want to scuff the surface of. Next up is a razor knife or a craft knife. If you have a craft knife, it's probably a little bit better because you can be more precise with your cuts, but I use razor knives enough at work that I'm just going to use this. Another important component, your paint. This paint is designed to work with plastic, but if you are scuffing and using primer, you can generally use almost any type of spray paint. It's important to think about what you want your part to look like when you're done because there are many types of paints. There's gloss finishes, flat finishes. I myself usually prefer a flat finish, but if you like shiny in your case, you're probably going to want a gloss. Lastly, we're going to need some screwdrivers, and this is going to vary from part to part. Different manufacturers, different components, they're all going to have different size screws, but these small control screwdrivers are some really good ones to have for doing this. You can generally pick these up at your regular hardware store. You want to be very careful to make sure you have the right size screwdriver because these small bolts will strip easily. Okay, time to get things started. The first thing you're going to want to do is be very careful with your circuit board. You don't want to harm this, you don't want to get oils on it, try not to touch it. You also want to be very careful with these pins up here that insert into the motherboard. Once we get this apart, I suggest putting this in a safe place where it will be left alone. Up front here we have our cover and our fan. The fan is something you generally don't want to paint. You mostly just want to focus on the cover of the card, and you also have your heat sink on the side as another component you don't want to paint. We just want to focus on the front here, and that's what we're going to take off. To get our cover off, we're looking at 4 screws on this graphics card. Everything's going to be different. You have to check around. There's tricky spots. Don't just start taking off every screw. Those 2 I just checked on the front weren't screws I needed. I only need these 4 on the sides. You usually want to start with the obvious ones. If it's still on there, work your way to something less obvious. The screws on this card were very small, so we're using our control screwdriver. You'd never be able to fit a standard Phillips in here. So with this GPU, you would definitely need the control screwdrivers. Okay, so this is my last screw. Now keep in mind, I'm not sure if this is the last one. I'm just going to apply a little bit of pressure, see if I can get the cover to pop off. If it's really difficult, odds are you still have another screw left to get. Okay, now that we have our heatsink exposed, this is a good time to go over your card and make sure you don't have too much lint accumulation, and you can get it out of there with a can of duster or an air compressor. If you use a compressor, I would recommend keeping the pressure low, under 25 psi. Okay, we're back to our cover. The first thing you're going to want to do is take your painter's tape. You're going to want to very carefully apply your painter's tape on the parts you do not want to scuff or paint. It is important here to be very careful with the edges of your paint because these are the final lines that you will see once the card is done. If your tape isn't square with the edges of your video card, you will be able to see that the line runs crooked down your cover plate. Okay, once you're all taped up, we're going to get out our knife. You're going to take the knife and you're going to edge around the parts that you don't want painted and remove the tape from the parts that you do. Now, the blade is very sharp. The weight of the knife itself is almost enough to cut through the painter's tape, so you're not going to want to apply much pressure, and you're going to want to start from the middle and work your way out. If you don't, you'll see here that I start to drag the tape a little bit, and I realized that I was better off starting towards the middle a bit and then pulling back towards the edge. Once you're edged out, go ahead and put your knife down, keep some pressure on the part you want the tape to remain, and remove where you don't. You should have a nice smooth edge around the outside. Okay, so now we're all done here and we're ready to paint. We're going to paint the bottom of this white and I'm going to paint the top. I want the whole thing white. I'm not a big fan of silver, so I want to get all that out of here and just make it pure white. Also, a good step is to make sure that you got your tape how you want it, because I just realized that I forgot to take this piece of tape off this bottom ring. Could have looked cool in the pattern, but I decided to take it off and keep everything symmetrical. Okay, next we're going to take our scuff pad and we're going to rough up the surface a little bit. We're just going to stay on the edges. We want to be very careful here not to mess up our tape that we just did. On the bottom, we can be pretty liberal. So when you're done, you should have somewhat of a rough finish. It's actually a little bit easier to see on my card because it ended up being plate and not plastic. On plastic, you should still have a little bit of a scuffed surface, but it won't be as easy to see. Okay guys, we're ready for paint. Step 1, shake the damn can. I don't know why not one human being I've ever met can take the 1 minute it actually takes to shake it. Okay, so now it's time to paint. You're going to want to keep your can about 8 inches back from your plate. You're going to want to make smooth strokes covering the entire range of the plate. What you don't want to do at this point is spray too much paint on. We're going to do 2 or 3 or 4 coats, whatever it takes to get full coverage. We do not want to put it on too liberally and have a run. It'll be much easier to put an extra coat or 2 on than it will be to get a run out. Okay guys, I went ahead and finished painting the cover and I got it all pieced back together, and here's what we got. We'll go ahead and get some good shots and we'll see how it looks. I certainly like it a lot better than the before. I'm not a big fan of silver. I love the white. It's a nice clean look and it is a strong contrast from the black as well.